welcome to the Demand Gen Summit. I am joined by Andre Yi, founder and CEO of Tiga AI. Andre has done a lot of cool things. If you've ever heard of Triblio, which I'm sure most of you have, he was founder, CEO over there, worked at Eloqua as well, among a few other things. And we're going to be talking about how to use sales or AI in sales. And he's got some really good insights. Some things I may or may not agree with, but I think he's headed down the right path, and also has a really big announcement at the end that I'm excited for him to share with the rest of you. So with that, before we hop into it, Andre, tell everybody I gave him the high level, but tell them a little bit about your background, what you've done in the past, because I think it really lends to where you are now.
Sure. As you mentioned, I'm a former Eloqua executive. That was a great run, and was a fantastic company with fantastic people. We ended up, exiting to Oracle after just fantastic years of growth. For about less than a year, I was, group vice president of Oracle Marketing Cloud. But then I really quickly moved on and started Triblio. And we were in account-based marketing space. And we sold the company in June of 2020 to a company called IDG, International Data Group. And I was head of a newly formed business unit within IDG. IDG itself was a Blackstone-owned company. So we made 3 additional acquisitions. We rolled the business up, and it was a sizable business unit. And but I left at the start of this year because I wanted to do something new, and I see a lot of opportunities, especially in the area of B2B selling. I just think that that's a place ripe for opportunity of innovation for a couple of reasons. One is that I think B2B selling has been long very inefficient. It's very human resource constrained. So I was intrigued by this idea: how do we amplify human function, human capacity, human sales capacity within B2B selling? And then the other is that I think it has some challenges, which you and I can get into shortly. I think there's some immediate challenges that B2B selling has encountered, and I'd like to try to solve those.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I know you've got something put together for us to go through.
Sure.
And really excited for that. So let's just take a look at what you put together.
What we're going to talk about is really how AI can transform B2B selling. But a lot of this is about the challenges of B2B selling. And so I think there are a couple of challenges. And the first is really this, and I don't know how you think about it, Billy, but B2B outbound as we know it is broken. And I say as we know it because I think, I've spent a lot of time in the last 3 or 4 months talking to B2B sales leaders and practitioners, account executives. And what I find is that almost everyone is sort of rethinking outbound. People are rethinking how sales development is done, how outbound works. And the general consensus is it's generally broken, or it needs to be refactored in some way. And in fact, some of the experts, if you go on LinkedIn, you'll see, different experts and voices in the space. They're saying the same thing, right? Inboxes are ruined. BDRs are getting only 5 meetings a month. Some people think you should not use any sales engagement platforms. Like, there's such a mix of views, but I think it's sort of hit a wall. And in my opinion, I think what they're saying, and from my discussions with over 30 sales professionals in the last 3 or 4 months, I think what they're saying is mass market outreach has failed, right? Or is failing.
Yeah. I don't totally disagree with you on this one. I think just like go and download a list of possible people who fit in an ICP, but really haven't shown any interest, and just drop them into, whether it's a mass email or even sometimes a call out list. It's inefficient. Like, it's kind of works, but it's super inefficient. And so in that sense, I think it is broken.
Yeah, I know. I often like to tell the story about how, the thing about the thing is templated emails, the sequences, I say they don't work. And when I say that, I don't mean they never work, and I don't mean they don't have a place. But what I mean is, as a primary tactic, they no longer work the way we expect them to. And a lot of times I like to tell a story of like how my wife back when I was at Eloqua, she, in the early days of Eloqua, she got an email from a vendor she used, and an email had like, "Dear Kathy," and had this kind of merge field personalization, if you think of it that way. And she was so, like, she said to me, "Wow, it's great. They know who I am. They know my name. They sent." And I had to break it to her because I was in at Elko at the time. I said, "No, Kath, this is not. This is. They don't actually know you. You're in a drip campaign. So
Yeah.
and but this isn't novel anymore, and I think it's kind of hit a wall.
Yeah.
So I think, for my perspective and from talking to folks, what's interesting is this has hit a wall, but there's still sort of outbound methods that do work. And what works is, for lack of a better term, I would say personal and insightful outreach, right? In talking to account executives who are successful, who do this for a living, who have repeatedly, been successful, they all have a very similar pattern. It's about deep research. It's about connecting relationally, obviously optimally in person, but increasingly more online over LinkedIn, and then finding moments for personal, insightful outreach, personal, insightful interactions. That seems to be what's working, and I think that if you talk to top AEs, a lot of them do that. I don't know if you would agree, or what do you see?
Yeah, I think on the enterprise level, this definitely is the successful motion. Like, you don't have thousands of accounts or hundreds of accounts. Like, you've got less than 100, sometimes less than 30 that you're working on, and you have the time to do that deep research, figure things out, and reach out very insightfully and with something personalized. I think it also works at the smaller level. You just can't spend as much time on each account. So one thing that we've seen works really well is, if you're selling into, that real SMB market where they do need to talk to a salesperson, but it's not, it's a 2 to 4 week buying process, not a, 6 to 12 month buying process or around there. One thing that we've seen is on that research part, like, they don't have as much time, the AEs, to do that research. But if they can know who is more or less in market versus just my total addressable market, it's what's my total reachable market by looking at things like who's actually been to my website, and looked at different pages. And then we can say, okay, let's grab our buying committee and let's start reaching out to these people. And it's not quite as personalized, but that still works really well because you're already on the radar. You've done that research at least.
No, I think you're absolutely correct there, because and that's why there's been so much interest in the last few years with intent signals, right? Like, I think that's been a whole movement or approach that the industry has taken. I think it's, you don't need as much research if you engage someone right at the point of the purchase cycle, obviously.
Yep.
Right? So I think that what you say is correct. I think, though, that segment of the market that is buying right now is pretty small. And you are right. I would say, when they come to your website, there's been a lot made of, like, third-party signals. I think one of the strongest signals you can have is repeated visits to your website, right? And
Yep.
and in that part, but that's only a very small segment of the buyers of the entire market. There's who's buying now. Obviously, the best part of the market that you want to tap into. But I think you said something there that's really true, which is, in larger companies, whether it's upper mid-market or enterprise, you need to do deep research. The trouble is, it takes a lot of time, and in fact, that's sort of reflected in my next slide. Is that sales teams have very limited time to sell, right?
Yeah.
There's this report here, and I think you've probably seen it, but sales teams only spend 28% of their time selling, and in particular, as it relates to prospecting, only 8.7% of their time prospecting. And when I've talked to these salespeople, they're always with this tension of, like, focusing on current quarter, closing on current quarter deals, which obviously is the priority, versus prospecting for next quarter's pipeline and opportunities, right? So and they constantly feel this tension. In fact, one salesperson said to me, if I have time to prospect, it's because I'm having a really bad quarter, and I got, which isn't a great, great
You
situation.
know, if you don't mind me adding something here, one
Yeah.
thing that I've been taught by Dave Elkington, who started InsideSales.com, is he's got this methodology with the sales team that he calls it CAS, close, advance, sell, or
Mhm.
or oh, I forget what it is, but essentially, I know I've messed this up now. But essentially, what we do is we measure on our sales team their prospecting activity and then how they're moving opportunities down the funnel. And that there's such a strong correlation with this, their quota attainment. And once that prospecting activity drops below a certain threshold, we're just like, dude, I don't care how much you got in the pipeline, you're going to sell out your pipe if you don't keep prospecting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
so we're spending, like, for our team, I know we spend about 20% at least of our time prospecting. And when you drop below that, we have reps that they sell out their pipe and then they're like, I got nothing.
Yeah, you're right. And you also mentioned something that, although it's not at the heart of what I'm saying, is absolutely true, that I've seen in my experience as well, which is a lot of folks focus on the volume of your pipe, but the velocity and motion in your pipeline is also
Yep.
important, right? You have to keep moving the pipe. Otherwise, you can have a pipe that is actually by volume great, but actually by stage really poor. And
Oh
you've got to.
yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. I sidetracked us a little bit. Let's
No,
keep
no,
going.
it's good stuff, right? Good. So I think what I'm saying is, like, these are the challenges, right? Outbound mass outreach, outbound methods are failing. They've hit a wall. Maybe it's a fair thing to say. And I think the point you made was, look, they may still work for small SMB. In the SMB space, you just have to go very wide. I wouldn't disagree with that. Um, and then but if you're going to, I would argue, if you're doing mid-market and up, you're going to have to do research. And one of the problems is there's very limited time to sell. I think AI can help, and that's really what I mostly want to talk about, is how can you leverage AI to do this. And to be honest, it's part of what I'll share a little more, but it's part of what my new company's Tiga.ai is all about. So, but first, I'm going to start with just how can AI help, right? Let's just talk about that. One of the ways in talking to sales folks, one of the ways that I see them already sort of using AI is really using ChatGPT. It's the starting point for just about everyone. But and the number one thing that one of the things that they're doing, I think there are two big areas, but one is conducting sales research. They might be researching a specific company, getting general background, some firmographic information. They might be researching individuals, the executives usually, and getting notable events or content related to these individuals. And then one that people don't think about is it's also pretty good at creating lists of companies. Not massive lists, but more like very targeted lists. Like, for instance, the example I gave here is, let's say you want to do a lunch and learn in Miami or something like that, right? You could say create a list of top 25 companies with less than 100 employees headquartered in Miami. And we found, and I've seen myself, that it does reasonably well with that use case as well. But any others that you think of, or first of all, do you think this is kind of accurate, or?
I do think this is accurate. I don't have anything else I would add to this.
Yeah. So these are the general use case, but I think in speaking with folks and using that myself, I see a number of challenges. And one of the things that I notice is, and I've used this quite a bit with ChatGPT, is researching a person does it's effective for executives. I'm not sure it always produces better results than just simply Googling. It's good in the sense that it does summarize it, but at times it leaves things out that you might, when you're Googling around, you might actually pick up on, right? Because in part, one of the challenges, I think, is it doesn't understand the context of who you are and what you're looking for, and that can vary. Um, the other challenge is that it's not current, right? I think
Yeah.
most folks know this. The foundational models were trained mostly up to 2021. So anything beyond that, it's very sparse. And you're going to find that if you want to personalize something, or you want to have a personal conversation, you're doing research so that you're preparing for a meeting, and it's not a good place to get current newsworthy events like, hey, did they get a financing last year? Or is there a new executive on their team? Or, who knows, maybe they made an M&A, there was an M&A event in the company, right? Those are things that you might miss out on. And then the last one, I think is really interesting. It actually, the hallucination actually can get pretty interesting. And when you you ask it to perform beyond its limits, so and the trouble, I would say, is that you don't always know when you're pushing it beyond its limits. That's one of the, right? So if you knew, you'd say don't do X, Y, or Z, but sometimes you don't know. So in the example in the last page where I said you can use it to create lists, so I was trying to create a list of 50 software companies in San Diego, um, and what I realized is that it could only produce up to like 25 or 30. And when I tried to say 50, I actually start by saying 100. And then I tried to say 50, 150. It started actually coming up. First of all, it started repeating itself. It would put company in the list again. And then at times, it would also like create fictitious companies and just throw it in there. And so, obviously, that's one of the challenges with this. Like, you don't know when you're actually pushing it to the limits of hallucination.
That's it reminds me of like a freshman trying to fill the word count on their English paper by repeating themselves.
Yeah, exactly. How can I say the same sentence 3 different ways so that I can get to
to my 500 words or whatever it is,
Yeah, exactly. So I think lots of good, that's very applicable. It's very useful, but you just have to be aware there are some limitations and to that. The other use of ChatGPT is really writing better emails, for lack of a better phrase, I guess. I think this is a very common use case for a lot of sales folks that I've talked to. They're using it to write prospecting emails. They're using it to write, invitation emails. And I think just a kind of the tip I have from using it myself, from talking to folks that use it, and sort of, there are lots of experts in the field that have gone very deep on this, but I would say essentially you have to make sure, if you want to write good emails, you have to define who you are, your own persona, what your role is. So for instance, the way I might put together an invitation email or prospecting email might be very different from how a junior BDR might do that. But large language model doesn't know that unless you tell them who you are, right? So you have to provide that context. Secondly, it knows nothing about your company, your product, or your service. So you have to give them the context of what the company does and that kind of thing. And then also who you're targeting. Like, are you targeting an executive? Are you targeting a mid-level manager? What industry? And then finally, the tone. Happy, friendly, professional. There are different ways to describe that. That's essentially what you have to do. So if you do that, you might get an email like this, which I actually made you so this is write an email to Billy asking him to take a demo of TIGA AI, tell him about yourself, and personalize the email. So now this was a bit longer than I wanted to, but this actually came out of ChatGPT. And I'm gonna, so if you look at this, right, actually it says, "Dear Billy," and I think the first paragraph was really good. I hope
I'm reading this.
I had the pleasure of attending your session at AI Revenue Summit, where you spoke about the power of personalization with AI tools. Your insight was truly inspiring and resonated with our mission. Then it introduces me, what we're doing. We're AI assistant for personalized B2B selling. And like I said, it's a little long, but and then it also tries to connect it with your work at Signal.
Yeah.
So you can critique this, but generally, right, good email. Now, here's the interesting thing. To make this happen, including this personalization bit, this is a very interesting personalization because it actually picked up on something you did before, right? And that might have gotten your attention. Didn't feel like it was just templated. Well, so this was the user prompt, but behind it, we actually had to supply this information to ChatGPT. right? It actually had to
Yeah.
say, right, who I am, background on me and my company, had to provide background on the prospect, you and your company. I don't know if that's a good description of Signals, but I pulled
Yeah,
it from
it's
the
pretty
website.
good. Yeah, it's right off the website. So
Exactly. You can hardly critique it now.
yeah, no critique here. It's good.
And then the personalization insight, right?
Yeah.
Had to supply that. It didn't know that necessarily, especially because it was just in August. It wouldn't know that, as I mentioned earlier. And then the other parameters like tone and length. Now, by the way, I said keep the email within 3 paragraphs. If you notice, it didn't
Yeah.
adhere to
Not at
that.
all.
Right. So the point is, like, I think it it's actually really good at writing emails, because if ChatGPT knows anything well, it knows language really well. But you have to supply a lot of information and you have and at times, even when you try to instruct it as it relates to the length, it might ignore you, hallucinate a little bit, if you would. But to create a really good email, you have to supply quite a bit of context. And I think that does work, but it's challenging. And so some of the challenges around using ChatGPT to write emails, you have to provide the prompt context every time you generate an email, right? Now, some of these you can put into a system prompt. If you're a subscriber to ChatGPT and you have the playground, you can put some of that in the system prompt, but you can't put all of them in, because a lot of it is within the context of the email. It's not
Yeah.
easy to do personalization. So it didn't know that, ChatGPT has no idea that you did a talk or hosted a talk at the AI Revenue Summit in August. You still have to do your own research for insights and then supply them to ChatGPT. It's something that people don't think about, and is that it's not really able to handle a continuing conversation. So a lot of the focus has been around writing the initial email, but it cannot actually carry on a conversation, because it only for it to carry on the conversation, you have to put the whole context of the conversation back in the prompt, and then it can reply to that, right? And then hallucinations, as I said, ChatGPT does whatever it wants. We told it keep it to 3 paragraphs, it ignored us, basically,
Yeah.
right? So I don't know if this is interesting or insightful to you, but I'd love to get your thoughts on.
Yeah, I think these are all real challenges. Like the fact that that email was really long, in my opinion. Like
Yeah.
3 paragraphs, I will probably read if it's looks like, okay, this is a legit email that's not just a template to me. I'll probably read it. But when I looked at that, I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know if this showed up in my inbox, I wouldn't probably get past the 3rd paragraph unless I really got hooked and like, this is my problem right now.
Yeah.
The hallucinations is a real thing from when I've used Chat GPT. It will, one example was I was buying a new truck earlier this year, and I was like, okay, let's see what Chat GPT will tell me about, like, how do I get a good deal on a used Toyota Tundra? And it would it would vacillate between being ultra conservative and like I can't really give you any advice, and then as I would change the prompt a little bit, it would get almost crazy on it. This is how you negotiate it, to things that I'm like, I don't think that would ever
Yeah.
work,
Yeah.
and how you
Exactly.
find it. So like it's a good, like, it's a real thing where it's like, dude, that would never fly in a car negotiation. I bought a
Yeah.
few cars. That's not going to happen, Chat GPT. So yeah, like the hallucination is a real thing. And then responding to emails. I don't think it's there from anything I've looked at where it can, send out an email, somebody responds, and it can just take that, have a productive conversation. It can try, but I think it's best on that initial kind of outreach is what I've just from what I've seen, like
Yeah.
help you write an initial email and
Yeah.
get a conversation started.
Yeah. Yeah. I think everything you said is spot on, and I think it's true. I think we were all very enamored, and to some degree still enamored with ChatGPT, right, as a collective. But I think we're all starting, having used it for a few months now, almost a year. I think a lot of us have seen some of the holes, some of the challenges related to that, And I think, when you, in August, I think actually one of the sessions I attended, you had with the guy, chief sales officer of Reggie, and he was talking about how ChatGPT is great, but what they're building is a purpose-built. He may not have used that word, but that's what I interpret, a purpose-built AI for writing these emails. That's how I view it as well. So I think ChatGPT, the way I explain it to people, in the world of AI, it's like your spreadsheet. I can use a spreadsheet for a lot of things, for planning my vacation, for doing financial reporting, for managing my pipeline. It's a general purpose tool. I think the next generation, to make it really useful for specific business functions, you need you need this purpose-built AI, and that's actually sort of like what we're doing at T, right? Obviously, I'll just be brief here because it's not meant to be a promotion, but we just want to say have entered private beta, and so we're in beta stage, and let me tell you a little bit about it, not belaboring it, but just Tiga AI is a purpose-built sales AI. It's particularly a sales AI for personalized B2B selling. It's an AI assistant for personalized B2B selling, right? And we see the future as the B2B seller, like an AE, maybe a strategic BDR, having a personal AI that can actually help them with a number of different things, including doing that personalized, insightful outreach that I was talking about earlier, right? I firmly believe that's the gap in the market where people are struggling. It takes a lot of time. So what it does is it'll help you conduct research and accounts in your target list, right? The way a human would. You would study these accounts, you would understand if they got financing recently, there was a key event in the life of the account or in the people in the account. Helps you connect and engage with your buyers, over social and other venues. And then it sort of autonomously will execute one-to-one prospecting conversations. You could think of them as sales plays, but now you said earlier, very difficult to do conversations. This is part of the problem that we've solved for, is that we realize that in the world of salesperson, that's why we're all enamored with ChatGPT, but when you actually think about what does a human salesperson do, one of the things they do is they have sales conversations, and there are different types of sales conversations. You could have a prospecting conversation, you could have a conversation to invite someone to an event, you could have a qualification conversation, you could have an objection handling conversation. I mean, there are different types of conversations. What we do is we can classify these different conversations and actually conduct the conversation. But the human's always in the loop. They approve. You're always in the loop to approve anything before it goes out. So I'm excited about it. First of all,
I am too. I've seen the demo, people. I have seen the demo, and it's really cool. And is it just Tiga.ai is where you go?
Yeah, Tiga.ai. Just if you want to join the beta, we're happy to have you. We can, right now we can only take a certain number of beta clients, but and I want to say, Billy, thank you for letting me share this at your event, and very, very much appreciate it. Any thoughts?
I'm excited by it. I think this is kind of the next step. Not kind of. This is the next step. And what you guys are doing is really interesting, and I'll be watching it closely, and we're excited to see where you go. And I'd encourage people, go check it out. Andre and his team have built something really cool from everything that I've seen, and should help your teams become more productive. So
sounds great. Thanks so much, Billy. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Andre.
Take care.